Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to an episode of Trans Talks. Adam and Kieran here live to talk about things going on in the world of current events for our community. So I'm Kieran. I use he, him pronouns.
And I'm Adam, he, him pronouns.
And there's a lot of stuff going on today. This week. So we thought we'd do a little bit of a live broadcast. Something that Adam and I have been talking about is how we want to use the podcast versus the live format, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things we're kind of leaning towards is this idea of keeping the podcast a little more light so that during the week, if you want to hear something that kind of takes you into a happy place, the podcast can do that for you. But we also want to make sure that we're talking about real stuff, the stuff that's going on in the real world. So that's what this is.
Yeah, that's what this is. That's what
Yeah.
this is.
So I think many of you are probably aware at this point that I think it was on Tuesday, the Supreme Court released their decision on the trans youth healthcare ban that was in the Supreme Court. And it was disappointing news, was it not, Adam?
It was disappointing news. I think it was stark after we spent the weekend protesting here in Atlanta. And we had a decent amount of people turn out for that. Not as much as other places, obviously. We're still in the South. But to have that kind of right on the heels of what felt like it could be a step forward. But it's a good reminder, too, that the protests are, how do you even say that? There's no ultimatum behind them. You know, like we still have yet to find what it is that we can say or else to, you know? So it's a
Do you
good
mean like
reminder
as a community, like as a broader?
Yeah, as a broader community, right? Like we're standing up and saying we don't like this, but what power do we have to make it change? We have yet to figure out what our avenue is. And things like what's happened this week in the Supreme Court and the way that the judicial system is working right now, the entire landscape of how all this happens is changing. Which is, it's notable. I don't know. Do we want to go through just a little bit of the history of? We did a episode on. So this is. Slow down.
Welcome to live.
Right.
Internet.
This is all coming from a law in Tennessee. And then the ACLU tried to appeal that law, and this is the outcome of that appeal. So we did a kind of a overview history of this. You can go back on YouTube and see that if you want to see that, and talked about Chase. What's his last name? I should have known that. I'm sorry.
Strangio. There you go.
Yeah. American Civil Liberties Union lawyer. So he's the one that tried the case. And so before all this, or as it was starting, I was able to listen to a town hall that he gave. And it's pretty apparent in the dissent in the ruling from the Supreme Court that the argument just doesn't hold water. Which is kind of what the ACLU was trying to argue, that you can't decide among a group who you're going to give this, that, and the other to, right? And it seems that the Supreme Court just doesn't really agree with that.
I guess, yeah. So I guess to give a little bit of a quick recap on what the ruling was, I'll actually read the first paragraph or a couple of paragraphs I pulled out of Reuters, their little kind of headliner on it. They say the U.S. Supreme Court upheld a Republican-backed ban in Tennessee on gender-affirming medical care for transgender minors on Wednesday. Oh, Wednesday, pardon me, y'all. In a setback for transgender rights that could bolster efforts by states to defend other measures targeting transgender people. The court, in a 6-3 ruling powered by its conservative justices, decided that the ban does not violate the Constitution's 14th Amendment promise of equal protection, as challengers to the law had argued. The ruling affirmed a lower court's decision that backed Tennessee's law, which bars medical treatments such as puberty blockers and hormones for people under the age of 18 experiencing gender dysphoria. The Supreme Court's 3 liberal justices dissented. And we can talk a bit about what the different judges said, because it was as many rulings are when there's a winning side and then a dissent. There were some very, very stark differences in the way that the law was being interpreted. And I think something that you just said, Adam, really is kind of what I've been thinking about. The law put forth here is intended to appear neutral, right? If I remember correctly, I've got some notes here that I'm referencing that I took. Let's see. Justice Roberts had written that the law does not discriminate based on sex because it applies to all minors. No one, regardless of gender identity, can receive certain treatments like puberty blockers or hormones to treat specifically gender dysphoria, was their claim.
Right.
And I think the thing that you and I are feeling the friction around is, and probably so many others, is that even when a law says it's neutral, like applying the same treatment restrictions to everybody, it can still disproportionately harm a specific group. And that is structural bias.
Exactly.
We've seen it happen. What was it? Plessy v. Ferguson, when they ruled that separate but equal was fair. That was never fair. That was never correct. The tension there, the concern that I think a lot of us are feeling, and certainly I'm feeling, is that this ruling risks carving out a particular identity, even under the guise of neutrality, carves out trans youth as a population that can be denied a particular thing that everybody else has access to. That's the tension I'm feeling. Is that carve out. Are you still there? Am I still here? Adam. Hello again.
Okay. I wasn't sure who dropped.
It's hard to say.
It's hard to say. But yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to kind of get to, that the ACLU's argument was so blatantly just laid out on the table, right? Like it's just it just doesn't hold any water. And I think Justice Sotomayor,
it shouldn't anyway.
Yeah, Justice Sotomayor said it the best, I think. And she, in her dissent, she said, by retreating from any meaningful judicial review exactly where it matters most, the court abandons transgender children and their families to political whims. In sadness, I dissent. And I think that's it, right? They didn't actually do their job by looking at this law. And instead, now we have, I mean, there's already 26 states with similar laws that will now be upheld. And there are a lot of, this opens the door for insurance companies and things like that to start dropping coverage for us as minors and adults. It opens the door for, I mean, if we're going to draw these lines on sex right here, it opens the door for a lot of rollbacks in any sort of feminism that we have.
Right.
It affects so much that it's, yeah, like I can feel it in my gut, right? Just
yeah. Yeah. The other thing that they were that Justice Robertson. I don't think I have the quote here. Um, but the other thing that they were claiming was that because they have taken the side of agreeing that there is too much unknown about the consequences of treating gender dysphoria on the medical front to legislate in favor of doing it. And so that in under that, they're saying we want to leave it to the states. Um, I I'm not entirely certain.
Which you don't do for any other medication. It's
Well,
just
uh, is that entirely true
I
when we're
don't know if
talking
that's
about?
entirely true in a broad scale, but like, would you think about doing that for other kinds of medication? Be like, oh no, the your governor gets to decide if you get your Prozac this week.
Right, right.
You
No, you
know,
do hear it
like
about things like birth control or that sort of
right.
thing. And although truth be told, I'm speaking a little out of turn because I am not entirely certain what the laws are there. But I know that the conversation is happening at a state level. Well, and it's a red herring too because
Mm,
every single major medical uh, uh, body has said yes, we agree that this is appropriate treatment for youth and
yeah,
for adults. You know, I think there's been a lot of I think we know that there's been a lot of rumor and like bogus, it's not even rumor, just bogus claims out there that even some of the media has reinforced, which
yeah.
is this idea that, kids are going into school and having surgery, kids are going into school and having genders reassigned, and that is patently false. That is not happening. It is not happening. It's just not. There's
We've just decided as a society that we don't care what truth is, apparently. Like, it's just like, oh no, we're just not going to look at that. We're going to just say that this is not safe.
Right. Well, and the fact that it like sticks when schools can't afford pencils for their students, where do they
Right.
think they're how do you think they're paying for these surgical things that they're supposedly doing? It's
Yeah.
just absolutely untrue. And every single major medical body is saying that these are appropriate
Yeah.
treatments for
I've got
uh
the
yeah, go
president
ahead.
of the American Academy of Pediatrics, Dr. Susan Cressley, said that her organization has unwavering support in gender affirming care and stands with pediatricians and families to make health care decisions together and free from political influence. That's the major pediatrics. Like it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make
No.
sense. It's a trap door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I don't think Adam in all of our conversations, neither of us was surprised that this was the outcome. We sort of anticipated that um, this was the likely outcome. Not that it was the sensical outcome or the outcome that we
Right.
desired, but that it was pretty likely going to be what happened. Um, how did you find yourself responding to it once the outcome was clear?
It's weird because I think that there is kind of the expectation is that it would fail because I don't know. I'm a trans man. I've lived a long time. um, but so it wasn't like a surprise, but like you said, it's still like I feel it in my soul. Kind of the same with the election, right? I
Yeah,
knew that there
right.
was the majority of, I felt that there was probably the majority of the people that didn't approve of us. And then the election showed me that, oh no, it was. And it's like, oh, well, now I have to face it because this is real. And, this is kind of the same way. And if they're going to, and it's scarier because it steps outside of medical sense, it steps outside of legal sense, and we are playing politics in the court, which is a problem on so many. I mean, pick a thing out of the headlines right now. It's a huge problem that we're just not obeying our own legal system.
Well, and it you and I were talking about this maybe briefly just yesterday. It's this idea of who gets to decide because really the courts are making moral decisions in this case too,
Hmm.
even beyond political. These are like ethical and moral decisions, which of course politics is all wrapped up in all of that as well, or at least in theory should be at it when it's at its best.
Mm.
So the Supreme Court makes a moral call here in terms of what is allowed for a human being, for a human being's family, for fill in the blank. Who who gets to decide that? Who owns that decision? Who gets to choose what is right
Right.
and wrong for a human being? And we're doing this constantly. The idea of, at least in my opinion, in the best of cases, when it comes to how our government operates, you have the three equal branches who may have a different makeup across the different branches, and that's intentional, so that you have this balance of power, and you don't have, in a perfect world, you don't have this pendulum swing uh of uh, change, unless it is to grant rights. It is not intended to take away rights from the populace. And unfortunately, just some of the things that we've definitely seen over the years, that's not how it works. And even
No.
well before we were alive, it's not always how it works, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
So, when something that you just said that stood out to me, that ties into this, is this idea that um, the majority of people are not in favor of us. And I choose to believe that I don't know that we know that. I
Yeah.
choose now, the folks that are speaking, the folks that are being heard, the louder folks, the folks who are putting people in power, and then the folks that are in power right now. In terms of those folks who are active, yeah, they are the majority. They're active.
I
Is that true in the population? I don't know. I hope
I
not.
think I hope not too. I think that my wife and I were talking this weekend just about we have to even stop and think and talk to each other about why it is that we're protesting. That there is a group of people that is going to protest no matter what, and the trans people are in that group, right?
Yeah.
Like we need change and we will create it. And then we are being joined by a group that is really just wants the status quo, right?
Mm.
Like it, because we can't say that our past presidents have done much better as far as throwing away people.
Right.
And I will not claim that in any way, shape,
Right.
or form.
No.
But what they're actually saying is we just don't want to see it, right? Don't show me, because then I have to think about it.
Right.
So I'm not, and I think that if we can get that group of people on board with the no, 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 we actually have to change, we've got a huge majority. And so I can only hope that those things continue to meld, and we continue to like see each other on that personal level. And hopefully we can understand each other's struggles, because it blows my mind that we can have this much wrong in the world and we're still having trouble understanding that others have struggles that are different than ours.
And different and not different. Like different,
Yeah.
and the fact that we're all struggling is the
Mm,
same, right?
yeah,
It's,
exactly.
somebody who has an entirely different background than I do. Struggle is struggle. And it's not a contest about
Mm.
who's got it worse. It's like, no matter what, we're all in it together, whether you want to be or not, whether you agree with each other or not. We are all in it together, because something that affects my neighbor affects me.
And
That's
that's a
that's
that
just how it
that's a
works.
huge point, because part of what this ruling says is that we do not deserve to be protected. And if we can start, like as you said, it's not meant to take things away, right? So if we can start using it to take things away, then what happens to other people's?
Right.
So yes, it what happens to us as trans people affects you, broader community, and the trans community.
Right. Yeah, the thing that you had said, I can't remember if you had just said it, but you definitely said it yesterday when we were talking about it, just you and I, around that second group of folks who will show up to protest when they've become uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Um, that it's unfortunate that we're in a space where that is currently the case. Like people outside of the folks that are affected are being made uncomfortable. However, there's a degree to which I kind of feel like in this moment in history that needs to be the case in order for us to get this momentum. That, I think the thing that's alarming to me, and maybe you just said this in different words, is the fact that so much that's going on around us is affecting all of us in different ways. All of the things going on with immigration, all of the things going on with the trans community, all of the fears that the broader LGBTQ. I mean, look, these
CDC.
exactly right. Government employees, right? All of these folks who have had vastly different experiences are suffering from the same problem, and it's a lack of humanity. It's a lack of um, empathy. It's a lack of believing that somebody else's fortune affects you as a human being.
Mm,
As a society, we've not been conditioned. We've been conditioned to believe the opposite, which is I can pull myself up by my bootstraps. And look, there is some truth to that, but that is not the truth. There are folks who are born into a system that does not accommodate everybody. Our system doesn't accommodate everybody. There are people who have a starting point that is a starting point that's set further back than other people's starting points because of the communities they're raised in,
right.
because of the economic
And,
situation that their families, I mean, any
and
number
to
of
your
things.
point, we shouldn't have to justify any of those things. We should just be able to look you in the face and say, I know you struggle because you're
Right.
human.
Right.
We all
That's exactly
struggle.
right. It just looks different.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Yeah.
just looks different. It looks different. And I can only hope, like to your point, that second group of protesters, if we can get everybody together,
Yeah.
whew, could we change some things?
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. I do think that well, two things. One, I'm pretty disappointed with the lack of coverage about this ruling. I have
Yes.
seen it. I've seen like the blips of it. I've seen the 2-minute reference because the Supreme Court said something about something and that always gets covered. Um the this kind of a ruling, I'm disappointed that it is not more alarming to folks,
Yes.
not necessarily because of what it's doing specifically to the trans community even. Okay, if you don't care about the trans community, well, that's unfortunate. And the, to the point of everything we were saying before,
Yeah.
if they're doing it here, I promise you, this is just an entry point into being able to do it elsewhere.
It's the tip of the
The
iceberg. All that, like when they were suing Maine for girls' sports and all that, this opens all of those doors to this administration to do those things for real on
Yeah,
a national scale. That's
yeah.
terrifying.
And we're talking, you know, we're talking about children here in
Mm,
this particular ruling, and in a lot of the topics that are coming up for y- under discussion around the trans community. And it
under the guise
is
of protection.
under the guise of protection, and it is an absolute, I'll use the term again. It's a red herring. It is red herring's not really the word I want for this, but it is a distraction, because really what they don't want, really what the folks who are putting their blood, sweat, and tears into limiting the lives and the benefit, or the rights of the trans community and people, members of the trans community, what they're looking to do is ensure that we do not have trans adults
Mm,
coming down the line. They don't care about protecting kids, because the truth is, like, uh, anybody that has done any amount of research, which we can say for certainty that most of these folks will not have done that. Anybody that's done any amount of research knows that, like, being trans isn't something you're that is bestowed upon you. It's not like
right.
contagious. It's not it just like, being gay. So there was this great, I forget where I'd seen it. It might have been a meme or something where somebody was saying, you know, if being gay was because of my surroundings, then I really should have been a nun because I grew up in Catholic school, right? Like, there's it's just not that's not how it works. if you understood that, if you have done any sort of research, then you do understand that. And if you actually zoom out and look at the laws that are trying to get passed, not just this law that was passed and upheld, but other laws where we're seeing, was it uh, several states, but Missouri was one that popped up where they're telling doctors if you treat trans
Mm-hmm.
patients, your liability insurance isn't going to cover you. If
Mm-hmm.
if you are trans, and I forget which state or states this was, but some states have been pushing to say you need to have, I mean, it's pushing kind of back into the Harry Benjamin
Yeah.
space, which is you have to have 3 years of documented gender dysphoria in order
Yeah.
to actually begin any sort of medical transition.
And
Who can afford that in our community?
I mean, I did it, and I paid for it for a very, very long time to be
Right,
able to do that in my 20s.
right.
And I mean, and I was that kid. I barely made it to adulthood, and I understand what it is to go through all those hoops and circles,
Hurdles. Oh
that
my God.
and to have doctors that won't treat you, or are scared to touch you, or scared to do those things. And we just don't deserve to go back to that. We've got an entire generation that we have slowly encouraged and given this given their lives to, like,
Yeah.
really, like, given their lives. And now we're saying, oh, never mind, we're going to take that
Right.
back.
Right.
Right. And if that can't get you up to protest, just thinking about it, these are children we're talking about.
That
These
are
are
being
children that
used.
are being used and told that they are unworthy, on repeat in the news, everything else. And that's just it. We are better than that. We damn well should be.
We better be.
I
We
mean, I
need to
just,
be.
yeah.
We need to be. We will be the cause of our own demise if we
Mm,
cannot figure out how to take care of the dignity of the people around us. And that's just what it is, right?
yeah.
There are so many people that we run into, pass, cross every day. We might even smile at as we are in passing, who we don't know what the hell they're going through during the day. And we're willing to say, well, you're not really worthy of fill in the blank. It's just crazy to me. There was something else that, and this is tangentially related around yeah, one of the other things that has recently happened is the military ban
Yeah.
for trans folks. There was uh, when was that? Like a couple weeks ago, folks
It,
needed to start doing their exit processing.
right.
Um, I had seen a really great, again, I think this was a meme. Somebody had made a comment about we're not strong enough for the military, but we're too strong for pro athletics. Like, which of it is it? Which
Right.
is it? It just sort of like it undermines the hypocrisy of
Love you.
the hi Angela.
Oh,
It
sorry, my wife
undermines.
needs the car keys. I'm
Oh
gonna
yeah, you're good.
just mute
I'll
myself.
just I'll talk to myself. It undermines the actual arguments being made, and it shows just how nonsensical they really are. It's hopefully I am reconnecting quickly. Otherwise, you'll see Adam here in a second, and I will uh, just keep making noise here until I don't. All right. Am I back? It says I was reconnecting. Am I back, Adam? Can you see me? All right. You went mute, and then mine started saying I needed to reconnect. So I was just saying, ultimately, the arguments are nonsensical. They are like you had said, I love that you've said this over the time. The circles of logic just don't
Right.
intersect. So they don't like they're because they're not it's not logical if you really sit down to think about it. But the problem is we have the 24-hour news cycle that has the is incentivized to cover only the most sensational versions of things and to create the most sensational angle of a sound bite or
Right.
a thought bite.
I mean, I'm
And
looking
so
at
they're
this, reading the article I have up from the Associated Press, and the advertisement just changed to some volleyball player picking a wedgie out of her ass, talking about the top hottest whatever in sports. I'm like, that's
right.
our media cycle.
That's
What? Why? Why?
right. Right. Like, is this necessary? Do I, it it's frustrating. You know what though? I think there are some good examples. I was looking up some examples of times when we have had some of these legal setbacks that
Yeah, they all ebb and flow. You're right.
yeah, that ultimately were overcome. Now, I'm not saying the timelines were what we would wish for. But one example I had referenced a little bit ago, Plessy versus Ferguson, 1896. Plessy versus Ferguson. Plessy upheld the constitutionality of separate but equal segregation, which really entrenched Jim Crow laws for a long time after that. There were definite consequences to that decision, no question about it. However, the light at the end of that tunnel, albeit 60 years later, Brown versus Board of Education ruled that separate is inherently unequal. Surprise. Of course it is. Igniting the modern civil rights movement. And the decision came after years of organizing litigation by the NAACP and brave families like the Browns who were standing up. So, even the most entrenched injustices, they can be undone with this persistent work. Did it take too long? Of course it took too long, but it happened. And, now we live to fight another evolution of improving the rights of folks of all backgrounds.
We thought.
Oh,
We
sorry.
thought.
Well, yes, we thought it ebbs and flows, as you said. Another one, Bowers versus Hardwick, 1986. Bowers upheld criminalization of consensual same-sex intimacy between adults. It gave constitutional cover to anti-gay laws and stigma. So if you were having sex at home, it could be considered illegal. You could go to jail for it. That was in 1986.
I mean, we used to arrest people for wearing just the opposite gender's clothing items.
Yeah. Oh yeah, well, and that's been proposed.
Well, I mean, but I mean, that's going all the way back to the 50s.
Yep, totally. Yeah, you're right, 100%. However, again, too long a time later, but it did happen. Lawrence v. Texas struck down those laws and explicitly overruled Bowers, affirming privacy and dignity for LGBTQ plus people. It didn't last forever. Let's see, Baker versus Nelson, 1972. The Supreme Court dismissed a same-sex couple's claim to marriage rights, stating it didn't even raise a, quote, substantial federal question.
Which is basically what this decision said about trans people, honestly.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Almost
word for word.
It would.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. To your point, this ruling of the Strangio case essentially ruled at the lowest level of legal scrutiny, which also is a setback for the trans community, by the way, although they're saying that they're not looking at trans folks, so maybe it's not. Anyway, but they literally looked using the lowest level of scrutiny, which says, does the federal government even need a say in this? So similar exactly to what you're saying, substantial federal question looking at Baker and Nelson for same-sex marriage. Um, for a long time, obviously, same-sex marriage was not permitted in the United States until Obergefell versus Hodges, when the Supreme Court held that same-sex couples have a constitutional right to marry under the 14th Amendment. And the decision followed years of activism, legal cases. I mean, there were so many legal cases around it, cultural visibility, growing public support. I lived in California when marriage was made legal and then voted to be illegal. And so, even at that point, not only did you have a right taken away, but some people still were legally married when that right was taken away. So you had a class of folks who was legally married, and then a class of folks who just could not get married, and it boggled the mind. But anyway,
Sound
um,
like a
and if
giant shuffle in the passport office to you, maybe?
oh, yeah,
I mean,
exactly, right.
what the fuck?
Like, what's the point? What's this, job security? What's going on here? Um, and the 2015 ruling solved that for every state in the country. So
But that's even, I mean, that's going from 80, what'd you say, 87 to
72.
72? Yeah, to 2015.
Technically, yeah, and I guess we could say, yeah, all to say though that these are examples
Yeah,
of
I mean, we're not gonna stop
eh,
fighting.
no, and the pendulum does swing quicker and
Yeah.
quicker, it feels like. My favorite quote from Martin Luther King Jr. is, "The moral arc of the universe is long and bends towards justice."
Mhm.
And I deeply, deeply, deeply believe that that is true. And whether that arc of the universe uh, includes planet Earth, boy, do I sure hope so. No, but I really do believe that inherently humans are such a social species that it is of the interest of humans for other humans to survive, to thrive, and to do well. Because when you are doing that, then your entire society is healthier and better. We just have we've weaponized each other. We've turned each other into, and look, this has been true throughout history. I'm not saying that this is a new thing today. But for folks in power, in order to stay in power, they have to have a common enemy. And that's exactly what happened with the last election when we started seeing those trans commercials
Mm.
coming on. Literal, and in fact, Trump has been quoted as having said, "Hey, look, that also will be our strategy this next time around. As you give it a couple of days before the elections, and we're gonna pump out these anti-trans commercials because we know that having a common enemy unites us." And I think the thing that I mean, there are many things that are gross about it, but probably one of the most disgusting things about it is such a what's the word I'm looking for? It's such a what's the word for when you're just so negative about everything? It's just such a jaded what?
Current contrary. I mean, the whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality is based on that. Like, if you don't have that chip on your shoulder, then it doesn't work, right? Like, you wouldn't
Mm,
you wouldn't adhere to the rest of the bullshit if you didn't have that giant chip on your shoulder. So they want you to hate other
such an
people.
interesting thought.
It's social
Yeah.
media. Social media is out there trying to engage you into aggravation. We've seen it in the way that we do our data processing and things,
Yep.
and what gets
That's
shared and
exactly
what
right.
doesn't. It's yeah, we're weapon.
That's
You're very
exactly
right
right.
that we're weaponizing each other. I think for the trans community, for me, it's it's like I have to hold on to the idea that we have been here, we will be here, we will continue to be here. You and I have survived into adulthood. I went through all of the Harry Benjamin things, without any coverage by any medical agency or anything like that, and I figured it out. Like, was that right? No, I should have been helped as a child. We should all have been helped as a child, but we can figure it out, and we will become adults because we are trans. They can't
That's exactly right.
do anything about that.
Yeah. So, if we've got any
Mhm.
parents listening, or any
Yeah.
kids who are just so
Find your community.
frustrated, you find your community, you look at you find your older members of the community, because we exist, we're out there, and we have exactly what you said, Adam. Adam and my version of traversing that journey has been very different, and both unique, and both difficult, and both, and both possible. So, the thing that I and I'm sure you agree with this, Adam, because you said it yourself. Go find your community members, go find those folks, go find the people who that if you're a trans person, you can start seeing or continue seeing yourself reflected back at you. If you're a parent, get your kid involved in community spaces where they can see adults
Come hang out with us.
like them. Come hang out with us. That's pretty much it. That's right. If you're in Atlanta,
what Kieran is trying to say is come to Trans Joy events. And please bring your parents, bring your kids, bring all of your kids, not just your trans kid. And because it's about more than that. It's about all of us knowing and seeing that it's not only capable. It's not only possible for me to be a trans man. It's possible for me to be a trans man who has a family that loves him. We need to know all of that,
and a community, and a good job, and
friends.
Yeah, that's just it. I think so much of the fear, at least for me, now look, going through puberty was no joke. I was not doing well during that time. However, had I had an example of what it would look like to be me today, if I, even knowing that I needed to go through puberty, I would have had such a different outlook on my future. I didn't dare picture myself turning 40. And
hardly any of us dare at 20.
Right, exactly. And so when I made 40, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I am here. I'm around. I'm alive. I'm living a good life.
Dead
I
yet.
am happy. I'm not dead yet. I am.
That's our birthday refrain, by the way.
Exactly. I am just so full of joy and life and love in a way that I didn't know would ever be possible. Had I had somebody that I could have looked at growing up, I would have pictured 40.
Yeah.
I would have pictured 60. I would have pictured 80. And it would have really revolutionized my life. And so I guess I'm speaking especially to parents right now, especially parents who are feeling so frustrated and like, hopeless. Don't feel hopeless. There is hope. We are examples of that. At a time when it was, in Adam's case, so very difficult to get resources. When I was going through it, it was tough to get resources, but it wasn't what it was. Today, it's a lot easier. And even in spaces where we are seeing that become harder, there are other ways and other places that you can go to go get treatment for your kids, for yourselves.
We are a resilient people. And doctors are not going to, like the pediatrics, what is her name? Dr. Susan Cressley, right? That quote that I said. She's not going to stop treating trans kids.
No.
Don't believe that.
No.
Don't believe that.
Right. That's so Adam and I, this is going to sound unrelated just for a second, but I'll tie it all back together. Hopefully, Adam and I, the other day when we were hosting the Trans Joy event at Felix's Atlanta, we were somebody had asked us the question of like, are we part of this other trans org in Atlanta, which we're not, but we like them, and we love the work that they're doing, and all that good stuff. We were describing sort of like what we saw as kind of the difference between what we're trying to do versus what they're doing, and both things are necessary. And the way that Adam and I have consistently described it is we really want to create these intergenerational spaces that are for trans people, non-binary people, and for the people that love us. And so it is expansive beyond trans and non-binary. It includes uh, staunch cis
Your
allies
emotional
in that
support person.
space. Exactly. Might not be a trans
No.
person. Your partner might not be a trans person. Your sibling might not be a trans person. So, we know how important it is to have a robust community that isn't limited to the trans community. And to be clear, I'm not saying that's what other organizations are trying to do. There's also a lot of validity in those trans only spaces.
Yeah.
What we're trying to do is build resilience in our community uh, uh, through those broader connections as
I
well
think a
as
therapist
connections with
friend
each
of
other.
mine, we were talking over the weekend, and we were about just the continual positive regard that is
Mm,
essentially trans joy. That we want to be that beacon of joy that is the trans community, because we are amazing people. We are talented. We are
yeah.
brilliant, and the broader community. Sometimes I don't think deserves it, but I but they need to see it, right? They need to see us and
Yeah.
our beauty, so that they can stop believing lies.
Yeah.
And some of that is
We
just existing.
Yeah, exactly. So much of that is just
Mm.
existing, and existing with each other, existing in society, existing in in places where everybody else is allowed to exist. We had one of our folks that was a new attendee of that event, um, which was so fun. That he was saying at the end, he said, I really appreciated what you said about your philosophy on what it is you all are doing, because tonight I really felt like I was able to show up. And to be clear, like, we had a diverse group of folks. We had trans folks, non-binary folks, trans and or non-binary.
It's a blurry line for
We
us.
address those separately, and yeah, exactly. We're however you would like to see that community spelt out. Anyway, trans and non-binary folks as well as cis folks, and he was saying, because I got to come out and hang out here, my identity wasn't the thing I was focused on. I didn't even think about it. We were we were telling so many fun stories and having just such a great time, and sure, trans topics do come up, and so does everything
Yeah.
else. So we get to talk about, like, what do you do for work? How's that going? What do you love about it? What do you hate about it? Oh, yep, same as everybody else, right?
And often those
Um,
trans topics, like the trans topics come up and they go so fast, because we
yeah,
don't need to talk
exactly.
about that. We understand, like,
No,
that you can say one thing and the entire table knows what you mean, and we're like, yeah, and we go on to the next, like, we
that's
get
it.
it.
There's no translating, right?
Exactly,
You're not spending your
exactly,
time translating,
exactly.
and so you can kind of laugh at the same jokes,
Mhm,
and those folks who are cis folks who are close to the community or and love the community are in on it too,
mhm.
because they know us and love us, and it is such a gift to be able to exist and not be thinking about the fact that you're existing.
Yeah.
Like, to not have to be so conscious of that. There was a moment at the event where Candace, our bartender there, a good friend of Adam's and I outside of there, she's the one that facilitates the space for us to come and hang out for free, and it's awesome. I was talking to her towards the end of the night as we were talking about planning for future ones. And the bar manager that night was she goes, "Yeah, he came up to me and he was like, gosh, geez, you can't even hear the music over all that laughing over there. They're having such a good time." And Candace is like, "Oh, you want me to go turn the music up? I can go turn the music up." He's like, "No, no, no, no. I love hearing them laughing." Because and I loved hearing us
Yeah.
laughing too. It was really, really nice to hear that affirmation of, one, somebody who is in the LGBTQ community who understands the value of us having a space to come in and be safe and have a good time, because we're not a community right now that would necessarily be thought to have a whole lot of reasons to laugh. But you know what?
We do.
We're persistent as fuck. And so we do laugh a lot. And we are, we are funny, and we have a lot of love and a lot of light and a lot of
We
life. So,
couldn't have gotten to this point in our lives without celebrating the joy. Like
oh, hell yeah.
we would not have survived. And so yeah, we get all the slinging and punches that are coming our way. We see all that too, but it's not new
Yeah.
to the trans community. And we will persevere. We are resilient.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know that there's a lot of heavy stuff going on with the military ban, the Tennessee law that has been upheld. We're going to see more ugly stuff. We will. I hate that that's the case. It is going to be true. I know the thing that Adam and I constantly talk about, and you've heard us, if you've tuned into anything before, you've heard us say it as well. Finding your peace and finding your people and intentionally hanging on to those things as a way to remind yourself that you are valued, that you are worthy, that you are beautiful, that your worth does not come out of some stranger's decision around what they think is right or good, or, there's a million, billion, trillion, however many people that have existed on this planet that have all had opinions. And so few of those folks, very fortunately, have a say in what that means in terms of actual practical sense. But you don't care about most people's opinions. These folks are no different. You go live your life. We're going to continue to keep showing up. We're going to continue to battle, because we always do. And remember that when you have your community, you're not alone. And it is so possible to find joy even in those windows of frustration and anger and, anything that you might be feeling as a consequence of these things. We are so resilient. And I do believe that someday, the world is going to look back on this time and on this community and know truly just how incredibly ahead of everything we were, just how free we were, just how we could see the universe in a way that other people have chosen not to. Everybody's capable of it. We've chosen to do it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Can't put it back in the box.
Yeah, there's no putting that toothpaste back in the tube. And someday the world's going to know that that's been true.
That's a very good point.
And I believe
believe that too. And until then, if you're in Atlanta, you come play bingo with us next week. How's that?
Yeah, so bingo. I love it. Good transition. So Red's Beer Garden, the folks over at Red's Beer Garden, they're freaking fantastic. First of all, if you like a hot dog, even if you just think hot dogs are okay, have one of their hot dogs. I'm telling you. If you don't eat meat, they have other things too. Also, their pretzel bites are really good. So anyway, they've got all sorts of beverages, non-alcoholic, alcoholic, of course, as well. They've got a great giant fridge of all sorts of stuff. They're really good at recommending things. We're going to be having a fundraiser with a friend of ours who hosts an LGBTQ plus reading book club. It is an event called Red's Reading Rainbow Bingo. Did I get that right? On Thursday at, I believe it's 7 p.m. Yep. Adam and I will be looking our finest. If you like the look of librarians of a certain age.
Lord help us.
Lord help them. And we're gonna be hosting bingo. There's gonna be
So many
quiz,
prizes,
trivia.
all
Oh my god,
all
so many
ages. That's what we
prizes.
love about breweries and beer gardens like this. That there is alcohol, but it's not the same restrictions as a bar. So kids are
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah, bring your whole family. The fundraiser is to raise a or to buy a little uh exchanging book library, like a book exchange library that's going to get hung outside. You bring a book, you take a
Yeah.
book, you don't,
So
it's free
we'll
books.
have a queer book exchange beforehand, and what's
Hmm.
left will go in the little library. And if we raise, which I hope that we do, I think we will, raise more
Yeah.
than enough for just that little library, it goes to us, and we will do some amazing things with it.
Yeah, so big thanks to Red's Beer Garden, and big thanks to our friend Abby, who is really the mastermind of all
So
of
much
this.
work.
We're super excited. Oh yeah, she's done a ton. All of them have done a ton of work for it. Um, yeah, if you want to be entertained by Adam and I, and even if you don't, come anyway.
Come see your people.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time. I feel better after having a little bit of that chat, after giving
Yeah.
us a pep talk.
Yeah. We gave ourselves a pep talk. We're good.
Yeah,
How
hopefully
hard
this
could it
lands with
be?
you all too. Right? How hard could it be? So, stay tuned. We've got a podcast. I know that this summer has made us a little slow on the podcast front. We've got one coming out that is ready to go. We're just scheduling it now. And in the meantime, go back and check out uh, Trans Joycast. I would say episode
It's
9.
episode 9. Yeah.
Treat
Treat
yourself
yourself. I
is how
guarantee a laugh. I've listened. Yeah,
easily.
easily.
Listen to the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's great. Right up to the end. Anyway, I think that's it
I
from
think it is
us.
today.
Before we go, Adam, what's been your joy today?
What's been my joy today? Today, just off the top of my head, my friend and coworker that has went to our goes to protest with me, and he
Yeah,
wears his little trans
we love
ally
him.
pin every single day. And yeah, I think he's my joy today. We had just to have somebody that sees you at work in a place that is otherwise stressful.
Yeah,
So and
totally.
to have a really good cis ally. I feel very
Yeah,
lucky for that today.
that's
Yeah,
amazing. He's
he
great. We
is.
love him. My joy today. Um, oh, I had a really good therapy session,
Always a joy.
and yeah, it can be a little tough during the session at times, in terms of like just getting the stuff out and getting to that processing spot. Um, I, however, always with my therapist, always laugh, and always leave with a new nugget and always leave with a new idea of how to think about something. So yeah, I had a really good session today. And so that was my joy. And then the other one is just a little one.
You
Monty,
can never
we have
do
a
one.
I never can do one. I have a lot of joy in life. It's true. You're right. But Monty is our she's a fluffy cat, and she went outside. Sometimes she likes to go on the back porch. She never goes anywhere else, so we let her on the back porch. She went on the back porch, was just laying down in front of the door, and Yosemite or Monty or Sitka, one of our dogs, was sitting on the couch inside, just sort of overlooking, just sort of watching out for her. It was so cute. I've totally, what is it, anthropomorphized there, uh, that what's going on there, but I do kind of think it's what was happening. They all love each other, so it's sweet. So yay.
Yay.
All right. Well, again, hang out with us this coming Thursday, the
6th.
26th, 7 o'clock, Red's Beer Garden. And yeah, we'll talk to you all later. We love you so much. Please hydrate, get out, see the sunshine today, and take care of yourselves.
Till next time.
Mwah!